Have you ever wondered what it's like working at IGN? How they produce their content, how they make reviews, and also looking for tips on how to get started in the games coverage industry? Well, this very special interview, a first in the series, is for you. This is for people like me who are into every aspect of the gaming industry, how they're made and how they're covered. So no more messing around. Here's a chat with Mitchell Saltzman, a senior producer at IGN. So, Mitchell Saltzman of IGN, welcome to the channel. Thank you very much for giving me your time. And basically, how are you?
I'm doing great. How are you?
I'm very good. So, for people that don't know this, basically I'm going to interview random people from the gaming industry on the PR side, journalism side, blah, blah, blah. Mitchell Saltzman is the senior producer at IGN. So, Mitchell, what is...
A senior producer.
A senior producer, okay.
It's an important distinction. There are multiple senior producers.
Okay, so basically, what does a senior producer do?
It depends on kind of the specialization of the producer role. There's a lot of different types of producer. I came up as an editorial producer. There are other people who are more like producers, like they help out with film shoots. They're the ones setting up shots. I am notoriously terrible at anything involving a camera. So like I had to do it for a little bit. I did like some podcast stuff, setting up podcast cameras and doing some switching with it. And I just am very lucky that I got out of that when I did, because I probably would not have been long for IGN if that was my job. And there was expected growth in that field. So I'm an editorial producer. I do I edit videos. I manage timelines. I'm counted on at IGN for as one of the few people, I think, at the company who's able to take an idea from start and carry it all the way to the finish.
Okay.
Pretty much entirely. I might have other people help out with like audio, or not audio, like thumbnail art or other aspects of it, but generally I can take a project from beginning to end.
Okay, so to me that sounds similar enough to a solo content. Obviously you have a team around you, but like similar to what I would do, where I'm making a concept, I'm writing a script, I'm recording it, editing it, putting it together, and then you said you get people to help out with thumbnail art, but I make my thumbnails because that's
I sometimes do too.
Yeah. Well, yeah. So that honestly sounds pretty interesting actually, because I generally thought that places like IGN would have, I know you said you are like one of the only people that can sort of take a thing from beginning all the way to the end, but I really thought that IGN and big places like that would have, this is the person that does like VO editing, this is the person that edits videos, this is the person that produces the content. So that is you sound like a very busy man, for I'd say. So
yeah, I mean it ebbs and flows. There's people at IGN that moment to moment, from like the time they start work to the time that they're done with work, they're always doing something. Like people on the news team are some of the hardest working people, I think, in the industry. My job has me very, very busy for stretches. Yes. And then usually like I am able to kind of calm down and take smaller projects until it's another big project. Yep. So it's very much project to project based. So like there are times where I am stupidly busy. There are also times where it's like, I wish I had something to do. I feel bad collecting a paycheck and not knowing, really what I should be focusing my efforts on. So the important thing I think of my job is finding ways to stay busy when you're not busy, and not overloading yourself when you are busy.
Yes. So,
but to your point really quick, like that is like what you said is true. Like that is usually how it works on IGN. We have a whole post department who handles editing. We have an art department that handles most of our art. We have writers that do a lot of the writing for features and stuff like that. It's just my background, and I guess we can get into this eventually, is as a YouTuber and as a content creator. So I kind of brought that to IGN, and it's one of those things where it's like, guys, I can kind of just do this myself. Like I don't need to, we don't need to have all these different parts. It's usually faster if I just take the whole thing
Yeah,
to the end.
that's how where I come from. That's exactly how I feel. Where I can work with people, but I definitely do my best work by myself because that's just what I'm used to doing. But
Hmm.
you just brought up my next question, Mitchell, and it's how did you get started?
Sure. I mean, it's a long journey. So I always wanted to do something in video games. Growing up, video games were absolutely my passion, and just the thing. I knew I wanted to do something in video games. I just didn't know what that was.
Yeah,
I thought when I got into college that it was making video games. So I went to a college that was especially suited for computer programming or computer science. And got into the orientation, looked at like the curriculum of the classes that I would need to take to graduate, saw how much math was in that curriculum, and quickly was like, oh, I've made a huge mistake. Because you wanna find what you wanna do, something that the intersection of what you love and what you're good at.
yeah,
I am not good at math. It's
neither
just
am I.
it's yeah, it's just something that I wouldn't say that I'm terrible at it. I got like B's and C's throughout high school, but the thing that I got A's in was writing. So I was like, okay, well, how can I
Yeah,
apply writing to the thing I love, which is video games? And to me, the answer to that was getting into games journalism. And so I switched my major to journalism, went through college, got my degree in communications with an emphasis on journalism. And right out of college, I was fortunate that I made a connection in like my freelance work, doing guides. I made a connection with a person who ended up being the editor in chief at a website called Gamefront.
mm,
And he wanted to basically take me while I was still in college. I'm like, wait, I gotta graduate first. And so we worked out a thing where I was like technically an intern, even though I pretty much just worked for him. And then once I graduated, I went full time working for his company, which was called Gamefront. And Gamefront was an interesting website because I was being brought in as the YouTube person, or one of the YouTube people on their YouTube side, because Gamefront was mostly a written based website with a focus on mods.
yep.
Um, and so me and two other people headed up the Gamefront YouTube channel, and basically we made and we all didn't know what we were doing, but we
You can
figured it
curse,
out
by the
on the
way. You
job.
can curse. You can say whatever you want.
It
Yeah,
was the Wild
yeah,
West. Yeah, this was like 2010, 2011 or so. And so yeah, so we built our channel basically on doing video game walkthroughs, which really were let's plays, but very few people actually called, like, the SEO was in game video game walkthroughs, not
yeah, yeah.
let's play. So we called them all video game walkthroughs. And I think I ultimately, like, Gamefront was mostly known for doing Dark Souls let's plays. So I got most of my fame, I guess, on YouTube for being the professional gamer to my counterpart James's absolute you know doofus kind of dork. Not really. I mean, I'm being mean to him. He's an improv comedian. He's not very good at
Yeah,
games, but
yeah,
he's super funny. And
yeah.
that was the dynamic between us, where
Mm.
he would kind of struggle through a game, and I would be like, "No, what are you doing? Oh my God, heal, heal! What are you doing?" And that was kind of my trajectory going forward. And then once Gamefront ended, I did some freelancing for a little while, um, skipping over a bunch of stuff. Ultimately, got picked up by Game Ranks as a writer. Told them that, hey, I know you guys got a YouTube channel. I can edit videos too. Had some opportunities to edit some videos for Game Ranks. They brought me in as one of their editors. And then a couple of years later, or like a year after that, I sent in an application to IGN, not really thinking about it, just like, hey, wouldn't it be cool if? And ended up getting the call, and that was how I got pulled into IGN.
Oh well. I mean, that's that. It's nice to hear. See, my thought. I know you said you have a background in journalism in college, but
Mm-hmm.
my my sort of outlook on someone that is went to IGN or went to GameSpot as someone who was an out and out journalist, you know.
Yeah.
So it is nice that there are people like myself who got in doing content creation and all that. That there is a way in for people like us, which has happened to me. But you know, I was very fortunate. But I think, I just think that it's very interesting coming from like an IGN, because I like to I think my next question is basically where do you think people like IGN slot into the gaming landscape as a whole? Like, they are still the biggest website in the world, but since everything has sort of shifted to smaller like smaller content creators and, you know, patrons, you know, like kind of funny and people like that. Where do you think IGN? Do you think IGN will always have a place in this industry?
I think so. I think there needs to be that. And you know, this I realize that this feels kind of like conceited almost because I work there, but I feel like there needs to be that big dog, and there needs to be, you know, the place that's able to offer, you know, these developers and publishers and PR people. They need to be able to have somewhere that has that reach of, like, you know, we can say we have 17 million YouTube followers, we have, you know, X number of TikTok followers, we have a global reach. You know, there needs to be that place that just has that, you know, muscle, I guess, behind it. And IGN, you know, is that. And I don't see any reason why that would ever stop, unless, you know, the quality went way down, which, you know, I as long as I'm there now, I think with our staff that we currently have, there's no way that we're gonna let that, you know, drop.
Okay. Yeah, because I'm always interested in. I also don't think IGN are ever gonna go away myself, but that's just an interesting question. But you said you are, and this is how I know you. You are the Souls guy. I think we first chat last year, just after the Elden Ring. A very quick review. That was when I first got into this whole landscape of like review, and then I realized, I was like, oh god, how do people do this? I reviewed like Dying Light 2, Horizon Forbidden West, Gran Turismo 7, Elden Ring, all back to back, and then I was like, oh, this is fun. Don't get me wrong, I'm not complaining, but this is tough. So that's how I know you. So would you say, is the Soul series your favorite series?
It's definitely up there. The Soul series, I would say, is probably the most important series to my, like, you know, I guess identity as a video gamer. Like, Dark Souls was such an important game during that time of my life. You know, doing the Gamefront walkthroughs, I was, you know, during that time it was a bit of a turbulent time at my home life. So, you know, being able to escape that and go to my work where I, you know, was, you know, surrounded by these people who I love, doing something that, you know, I adored and had so much fun every day going into work. It was just like such a impactful moment on my life.
Yeah.
And then, you know, going forward with, you know, Dark Souls 2, 3, also, like, you know, those kind of encompassed a huge chunk of my time. And then, it's never really gone away, and it's only gotten better, you know, since then, culminating in Elden Ring.
Yeah, which is one of the greatest games ever made.
Yeah.
So,
I remember you, because you reached out to me in a DM, and you're asking me how far you were.
Yeah.
And you described that you were at Malekith. And I'm like, oh, you're almost at the end. How long did it take you? You're like 42 hours. I'm like, how did you get to the end in 42 hours?
I maybe a good bit of luck. I'd imagine it was a lot of luck and some skill. But yeah, see, because I was 13 when I played my first Souls game.
Yeah.
So that was when Dark Souls came to the PC, and I remember Total Biscuit was like championing the PC port, and the PC port was absolutely atrocious. But that's a story for another day. So I think since I review games, like, that's obviously my thing on this channel and on Game Explain. I just kind of want to hone in on reviews a bit, because I know you because of your IGN reviews. I really like your reviews. I also want to touch later on your sort of presenting voice. I think you have a very good voice, and I noticed that you said you like voice acting, so I wonder
Yeah.
if you have
Okay.
anything there. But
Sure.
okay, Mitchell Saltzman, you are reviewing a game. You've recently reviewed Street Fighter 6. You recently reviewed Final Fantasy 16.
Hmm.
Give me a day in the life of Mitchell Saltzman when he's coming up to an embargo and he has a game to beat, and he also has whatever he has to do with IGN. So how does that go?
I mean, it depends on the game. It depends on what else is happening. Usually, one thing that I will say about IGN, and one of the wonderful things about working with them, is that if you are ever in a spot where, or at least I shouldn't speak for everyone. Speaking for myself, if I'm ever in a spot where I feel overwhelmed with my workload, I feel comfortable going to my boss and being like, hey, I'm kind of dealing with a lot of stuff on my plate right now. Is it at all possible to, see if we can offload some of these responsibilities to some other people and let me focus on just, doing this? And, my supervisors, my bosses, and my coworkers are always, down to help out in that regard. So I don't usually have to, worry too much on that side of it. But yeah, when an embargo is approaching, I usually try to get ahead of things, so that I don't get in that position of stressing out with a
Yeah,
really tight deadline. And also, and another thing, I'll say is that uh, Dan Stapleton, the reviews editor, is also very good about, if you go to him and be like, hey, Dan, this review, they didn't really give me the amount of time that I
yeah,
would have needed to properly get through the game and get a review out before the embargo. We're going to be a little late on this one. Dan is like 100% behind the reviewer. He's understanding, and I've never had any kind of issue
yeah,
with that. So, it's not really that bad. I do some, long nights of playing through a game to get through it. But it's also something that I would do if I was just playing the
yeah,
game for
yeah,
fun
yeah,
anyway. It's I love video games so much that I have never really lost that, desire to just like consume a
yeah.
game that I'm really, really enjoying. So yeah, the day of the life of Mitchell Saltzman when he's reviewing a game is really just the day in the life of Mitchell Saltzman when he's just playing a game.
Yeah.
Like,
And
I just play through a game, and I try my best to take the right amount of breaks. My wife is very good at being like, hey, you haven't had water in a little while, maybe
you
you
haven't left
should
the house
drink.
in 3
Yeah,
days.
yeah, you want to go for a walk?
So, when you are reviewing a game, like how does it work at IGN? Do you have? I assume you have a desk where you sit, and that is your desk. And
Yeah,
do you have consoles set up there, or do they have basically playing rooms where you go in and you capture footage, or how does that all work?
so it's first off, I work from home mostly now
Yep.
because once COVID hit, we kind of transitioned to a mostly work from home kind of workflow. But in the before times, it really depends on what your role is. If you're a news writer, you probably don't need a console on your desk. If you are like me and you deal with a lot of game capture, then yeah, like I had a Xbox, I had a PlayStation, I had a Nintendo Switch, all on my desk, and I had a capture box that I would capture to. We had like this giant network that you can just capture to, and you can access it from any computer. um so yeah, it depends on your role, but we also have what we call capture bays, where you if you weren't one of those people that had a console at your desk and you were doing a review, you'd go into a capture bay, you'd close the door, and you would just kind of exist there.
Yep.
I was never a fan of those. Whenever I was on a review, I would be like, hey, I'm on a review, I'm gonna play this from the comfort of my home,
Yeah.
and that's fine too.
Okay, yeah, because that's what I do. I have my desk here, but if I'm reviewing a game, I usually take my PlayStation into the sitting room and sit down in front of the TV and play it, because I know I'll be sitting there for however long. Like with Elden
Yeah.
Ring, like I played that game non-stop for 5 days or something. Now I loved
Mm-hmm.
every second of it, but yeah. So
Yeah.
the next thing I kind of want to touch on is about, obviously we learned about how you got into the industry, but would you have any tips for people getting into it now, and like how it has changed since you've gotten into it, and if you think there's anything people can do differently now?
It's hard because I feel like my road to getting in at IGN is so different than what a lot of people do. Um, I think nowadays the best way in is probably to do guide writing. Guide writing is something that everyone needs writers for. Like
Yeah.
guides are the most important piece of content that a video game website can do right now. Because if you think about it, you know, not all of your friends who play games really care about reviews, right?
Mm.
But everyone gets to that point where they don't know what to do in a game. They want to get through a thing. They want to find all of the altars of Lilith in Diablo. They want to know where all the shrines are. So guides do a ton of traffic. And so what I would recommend to anyone that is interested in getting into this business, it's to learn how to write guides. And I did guide writing too
Mm.
when I started out. I That was how I met my contact who got me into Gamefront. It was a lucky pull, but sometimes you just have to be in a position to be able to pounce on opportunities when they come.
Yeah.
And I think by becoming a guide writer and learning that style, that puts you in a good position. Um, there's other avenues. I think the important thing to know is that there's a ton of different avenues to get into what I do or what we do. You could, take the news route and become a news writer. In that way, you would apply to like freelance for doing news articles. The only issue with that is that the pay is not very great per article when you're
Yeah.
doing news, and
Yeah.
you got to be fast.
Yeah.
So there's that avenue. If you want to go my route, my recommendation is learn how to edit, learn how to do YouTube stuff, because the skills that you learn doing YouTube make you very valuable, I think, in the games coverage industry.
Yeah.
Being able to edit your own videos, being able to voice over your own videos, being able to know what looks good in a thumb and be able to create that in Photoshop. I think those are skills that even if you're not applying for a role that specifically uses those, you can put that down on your resume, on your cover sheet or your cover art. What's called cover
Cover
letter.
letter. Yeah.
Cover
I've never
letter.
written a CV in my life, so
You can put it down on your cover letter that you have those skills, and that makes you more. And, those give you the extra edge, I think, that could get you hired over someone else who might be just as experienced as you are.
yeah. Yeah, well, I would just like to echo that. I think the bet like a great thing to do, as you said, with getting into YouTube is to basically just make videos, and then you have a
Mm-hmm.
portfolio. And that's how it worked for me. I one day just sent off a random application for freelance and stuff for Game Explain. Obviously, I had my portfolio of 100 videos that I made on my own channel, and then obviously the skills I learned through that as well. But
Yeah, and
I
I
want
also think it's important to know that you know everyone at IGN wears multiple hats. Sometimes if you're a news writer, sometimes you'll be pulled into write a review because you're the
yeah,
one who's most passionate about a specific video game. Sometimes we'll have to do a let's play, and you might be on camera for that. The days where people just do one thing are, in my opinion, pretty much over.
mm,
It's very rare, I think, that someone at IGN only does one thing. Um, yeah, I think
yeah,
that's kind of what. Yeah.
yeah. Well, just yeah, that's exactly what, like, that's why I'm doing this series, is as I want to hone my skills as an interviewer, and I want
Hmm.
to, I started off by doing pre-recorded reviews, and then I wanted to move into let's plays, and then I wanted to do like less scripted stuff, podcasts, and it's all just
Hmm.
great just as a way to build up your just your skills. And as you said, as you go into any place, essentially, like even my role at Game Explain, like I do a lot of reviews, but there's times when they're like, "Oh, do you want to cover this news thing? Oh, like if you're playing this game, do you want to do a guide? Or we have a discussion to do?" And yeah, it is just great just to just learn loads of different skills, and then ideally, I'm sure everyone will kind of gravitate towards, "Oh, I prefer to do this, I prefer to do that," but you won't always have to do that.
Mhm.
So, I have a specific question. As I said, you like voice acting. I think you have a very
Mhm.
good voice for these. That's one thing that stood out to me with your reviews. I think
Thank
as
you.
IGN reviews go, I think it's you. And then, unfortunately, I'm forgetting his name. I think he works for IGN Australia, the guy that always
Luke
reviews the
Riley.
racing games.
Luke Riley. Yeah,
Yes, he's hilarious.
he's
So,
amazing.
yeah, so it's like when I think of IGN reviewers, that's who I think of, you and him.
Oh,
So,
thank you.
you like voice acting. I saw that on your
Yeah.
See, I've done some research, Mitchell. See,
Yeah.
and I did actually look you up on IMDb, and I saw that you
Ah,
have
look at
a
you.
single role in One Punch Man.
Uh,
Yes. Have you done
yeah.
anything else?
Yes, I have. Oh, look at you, regular hot ones. What's
Yes. Oh,
Sean
yeah.
Evans, a regular
Yeah.
Sean
Exactly.
Evans
Yeah.
over
We'll bring
here.
up my or what's the Instagram? The explain that gram.
Yeah. So, I brushed over a period of time after I got let go of Gamefront, and the reason why I brushed over that is because that was kind of the period of time where I was pursuing voice acting. Um, but yeah, so it was always another passion of mine. Like I love anime, I love video games, obviously. Um, and I love the idea of like bring something to life that didn't have life before using just your voice and your what you put into it. And uh it was kind of like on a whim, like a buddy of mine who I met in college was like, "Hey, do you want to take like Crispin Freeman's voice acting class?" He was also very into voice acting. I'm like, "Yeah, you know what? Let's do it. Let's just spend the, $400 or whatever that it costs, and let's actually like see what it takes to be a voice actor." And we did it. It was a really cool experience. First of all, just getting to meet Crispin Freeman, who's one of my favorite voice actors. I did my senior project in high school on his career. um, and after that, I went to Anime Expo, and they did this thing called an open audition, where I think it was for the anime Magi. And it's a free open audition. You'd go into the floor, you would stand in a line, you would come up to a microphone, they would let you choose which character you wanted to read for, and you'd basically just give an audition in front of like 50 people, or however many people were at the booth at that time. And then they would give you a little bit of feedback and send you on your way. And I ended up getting a callback from that open audition, got brought into Bang Zoom Studios in Burbank, got to audition for like the actual cast of Magi. I got to audition for Alibaba, a role that ultimately Eric Kimmerer got, who's actually a friend of mine now. um, and yeah, through that, I basically got into their little, what's called Walla. I got into their Walla circuit, which is basically background voices.
Yep.
So, if it's a school anime, it's all the people that's, in the crowd of the school while the main characters are talking. And it's kind of improv. They'll just like tell you like, okay, here's the situation, just keep it quiet, but make sure that there's an actual conversation happening. And you just, act. You would just act in the background. And sometimes you do like big reactions. Like so you asked what other things I'm in Toradora, I'm in Kill la Kill, I'm in the Magi spinoff, the Sinbad spinoff for Magi. I'm in a live action Korean drama called The Flu. I'm in a couple other things that I'm in uh what's that show that Jalen did? Irumakun. Something involving Irumakun. I don't remember the full title of it, but yeah. So I'm in like a handful of things doing background voices. Never like a main character though. That's kind of like my one thing that I would have loved, or a named character. I never got
Yeah.
to do any kind of named characters.
And then once you kind of started back at Game Ranks and IGN, is that just something that you completely stopped doing voice acting, or
I mean, it's something that I still pine for, but it is ultimately, a thing that I would like to revisit when I'm older, and because I'm not going to be able to be playing video games for a YouTube audience for my entire life. So I would like to eventually, once I step away from video games, maybe even when I retire, to see if I can do some
yeah.
old man voices.
Oh well, still, it's really cool. And while we're on the topic of voice acting, obviously you said you did lessons. If you were to give
Mhm.
like a couple of general tips of stuff that you learned for people who want to properly use and project their voice into a microphone, whether it be for voice acting or even just something like this, just YouTube, what would you give them?
Uh, well, first of all, if you're planning on doing voice acting, the number one misconception about it is that it's just funny voices. Like, oh, I can do a funny voice, I should voice act.
Yeah.
No, no, it's
Sometimes you have to
voice
play the old
acting.
man. Mm.
It's acting. You need to learn how to act.
Yeah.
So my recommendation is to take a class like Crispin Freeman's. I've taken a bunch of classes over the years. The ones that I would recommend the highest are Richard Horvitz, who is the voice of Invader Zim. He has a fantastic class that really focuses on getting you out of your comfort zone
Yeah.
and you know making you feel the character that you are trying to embody. He's got like a 5-step process of you know how to get in that headspace of a character, and it's just really really good. He's such a nice guy and such a good teacher. And then I also recommend Bang Zoom has Adventures in Voice Acting with Tony Oliver. Those are also fantastic classes. And I think ultimately the other great thing about taking classes is that you're not only learning, but you're also making connections. You're making
Yeah.
friends in the industry. Some of the friends that I made in voice acting are some of my best friends. And also they're also people that are like actually big name voice actors now, which is kind of crazy to think about. My one of my friends that I made in my very first voice acting class is now the voice of Shang Tsung in Mortal Kombat 1.
Oh.
So it's just
I'd
like
say that. Yeah,
crazy to
that's really
see.
cool. Yeah.
Yeah, one of my best friends in the world right now is the voice of Giorno Giovanna in JoJo Part 5. So it's just like crazy to see, how people who have stayed in the industry have kind of, gone off and flown with their own wings. Um, but yeah, it's also my other big thing that I'll say is that it is hard.
Oh,
Um,
I can only imagine.
the life of a voice actor, and this is also one of the reasons why, as soon as that branch from Game Ranks came down, I grabbed it with
Yeah.
all my strength. It's a hard life. You do not make a lot of money
Mm,
until you get that big break,
yeah.
and even getting small parts is a struggle. You gotta hustle. You gotta audition every day. You gotta, you know, not just every day. You gotta audition multiple times every day, and you gotta be okay with the fact that if you don't get a job for a couple weeks, that you got to be able to survive off of
Yeah.
whatever you
You'd
still
be eating
have.
noodles.
Yeah. It's a hard life, and anyone who does it and succeeds in it has my utmost respect, and anyone who is currently in the trenches fighting for their lives, you've got my respect too, and I wish you the best.
Well, that's cool because that's something that I struggle with is using my voice as in because I always strain my voice, you know.
Mm.
So is there anything there like I hydrate, I drink water, but there's just something I don't know why. Like I could stream for 3 or 4 hours and my voice would be gone.
Mm. I think a lot of it is, making sure you're giving your full breath to everything that you're saying. Slow down.
Yeah.
Anytime you're stumbling on something, it's usually because you're going too fast.
Mm,
Make sure if you're having trouble, and I struggle with enunciation all the time. In fact, I saw a comment on my Street Fighter review recently that said that they couldn't understand what I was saying because I don't enunciate, which I think was a little bit of an exaggeration, but there is truth to it. But when you have those issues, sometimes it's good to over exaggerate the words.
mm,
So like like open your mouth as wide
Yeah.
as you can if you're talking. So like I'm just gonna read 2 secs just setting up OBS. Like,
Okay.
sometimes I just read that from the
Yeah,
chat log.
yeah.
Sometimes it's good to just get the words on your mouth and exercise your muscles in your jaw, so you can kind of get them out a little bit easier.
Okay.
But ultimately, it comes down to using your diaphragm, getting the proper breaths, taking your time, and if you're struggling, take a break.
Yeah. Okay. Well, that was there's some good tips, because that is something that I do struggle with. So, I won't keep you too much longer. I have a couple of rapid fire questions, okay?
Okay.
Okay. So, firstly, what's your favorite game?
I hate this question. Because there's so many metrics that I can base it off of. Elden Ring sticks out in recent memory as just being, the best game I've played in recent memory. Dark Souls, like I said, has a very special place in my heart because of, the impact that it made during the time period that it made. Super Smash Brothers Melee, also, like during college, I played the hell out of that game. That game helped me make friends in an environment where I was very lonely. So like that game also has a very special place in my heart. Usually I default to just saying Dark Souls.
Ah, well, that's, I'll accept that answer. I'll accept it. Okay. Games that of any game that you have previously reviewed, what one would you think you would review differently? As in, you'd give it a different score, or maybe 2 years on, you realize that the game actually isn't that good, or...
I used to think Dragon Ball Fighters. I think I gave it like an 8.
Yeah.
I probably would have, a couple months down the road, I probably would have given it a 9, mainly because one of the issues that I had with that game, and fighting games are so hard to review because you don't really know the mechanics until you play against people who know the mechanics.
Yeah.
And one of the things that frustrated me when I first started playing Dragon Ball Fighters is like, the super dash and how powerful it was, and how like I couldn't react to, I knew the thing to do against it, but I couldn't react fast enough to do it. And it kind of, it made it less fun of a fighting game to play than something, that didn't have that super dash. Playing through the game more and playing against higher level players, eventually I got to a place where I enjoyed the risk reward of using a super dash, and there's all kinds of other really cool things about that game that I just didn't really get to dive into. So Dragon Ball Fighters probably would have adjusted that to a 9.
Okay. And 2 more. One is kind of not a rapid fire question, but like how do you deal with comments? So I reviewed Final Fantasy 16. You gave it a 9 out of 10, I believe, didn't you? I didn't really like the game. I thought just the pacing was a bit off. I won't go into it, but I didn't like the game. I just said I was disappointed by it. It's a good game, but not what I was expecting. Like I was expecting a 9 out of 10, but that's just not what I found. And the comments on that video, like it's gotten 15,000 views, which for my channel is great, and the comments, like nearly 1,000 comments, and it's just insane. I can't keep up with them. Can't keep up with the positive ones, but the negative ones of people calling me a scrub, and I don't know how to play games, and how do you deal with, obviously on IGN, the platform is so much, like I'm sure you get tens of thousands of comments. So do you read them, or do you just ignore them, or?
I do read them most of the time. There are times where I know that a video is going to have terrible comments, and I just I don't want to deal with it. But most of the time I do look at the comments. I think the comments, even that comment that was making fun of the way I enunciate, there's a little bit of truth to it. I do have some issues with enunciation, and sometimes you can take those bits of truth, if you can discern what is actually true about a comment and what is just them being crazy and just being a person on the internet that is freely allowed to say whatever the hell they want. You're able to improve upon stuff. So I do think that there is value of looking at comments. That said, I don't usually have to deal with topics that are sensitive. Like a lot of the reviews I write are for dumb games that, aren't don't have ties to real world issues or anything like
Yeah, yeah.
that. And I don't know how I would recommend someone deal with that kind of situation, because I don't think the advice of, look at the comments, you can find something that you might be able to improve about yourself, really applies there. So
Yeah, yeah, I
I
understand.
do
Yeah.
think it depends on the situation. But most of the time I do look at the comments. Sometimes I respond to comments. I've also found that most of the time when you respond to someone who's spouting ignorant BS and you call them out on it, they'll be like, "Oh, I didn't think you would actually respond to this.
Yeah,
Sorry, you're right, I guess."
yeah, yeah. It's
They
yeah. You've
fold very
fought
easily.
back to them, and then they're like, "Oh crap, I wasn't.
Yeah,
Well, what do I do now?" Like a deer in
yeah.
headlights. Yeah.
I
So
do think a lot of people just kind of write stuff not thinking that you would ever engage with them.
yeah,
And, they just say it and then forget about it.
yeah. Okay. Well, one last question for you, Mitchell, before I let you go.
All right.
Are there any reviewers? Not obviously you can talk about your colleagues at IGN, but someone outside of IGN, preferably, that you like, or you watch, or you listen to, or you want to just recommend people go watch.
Oh, yeah. I would say the number one reviewer in my mind is SkillUp.
Yeah, yeah,
I think SkillUp he's just so good.
Mm,
He's funny. He has an analytical mind that's able to break complex mechanics down very, very well. And his videos are just so well edited.
yep,
Um, I am very jealous of that man. And he's
yep. Me
also just
too.
he's a really nice guy. We've interacted many times over DMs. We've swapped Elden Ring stories. Just a delightful human being. Um, I would also say, I love Easy Allies. I'm very sad that Ben Moore is no longer part of the industry. I think he was one of the best traditional video game reviewers. But I think everyone over there does really fantastic reviews. And then, people at IGN, my favorites are Tom Marks. I think Tom Marks is just, first off, the nicest person I've ever met. Also just a really, really good writer, really good editor. I think Dan Stapleton does fantastic reviews. Also, he's made me a better reviewer by his own edits on my reviews. Luke Riley does wonderful work, of course. There's so many people that I can name off at IGN that do such good work, and it bothers me when people talk bad about IGN reviews, and they bring up stuff from like 2005 or something like that, and it's
Yeah,
like,
yeah,
guys, it's a completely different
yep,
cast of characters. It's a new season.
yep. Yeah, but you gave this game a 7, but you gave this game a 9, even though they're different reviewers. Come on, come on.
So,
But yeah,
I do wish people would give us more of a shot and not, go back to the same tired arguments of yesteryear.
yeah,
Who else? I'm sure there's some other people that I would love to shout out. Oh, Blessing from Kind of Funny, I think does a wonderful job. Um, and yeah, Chris Carter was always one of my favorites from Destructoid. Brandon Jones of Game Trailers fame and former Easy Allies fame is the person that I look to the most in terms of developing my own voice when it came to video reviews.
yeah,
So yeah, another thing that I'll say for like people who want to get into reviews or video reviews, watch other video reviews.
yep,
Like, see what people do right, see what, take what, I don't know if steal is the right word, but steal
yeah. No, well,
steal
it is.
whatever.
It's true. Yeah,
I
yeah,
guess steal is the right word. Steal, what works and see if you can apply it to your own style.
yep, yeah. Because
And of
like,
course, Andre Seegers and the wonderful people at Game
yeah,
Explain do wonderful reviews as well.
I'm included in that bracket. Uh,
You too.
no, because well, that is true. Just as in steel, because like,
Mhm.
if somebody watched my channel, they would very clearly see my channel is inspired by Luke Stevens. It's inspired by Mr. Matty Plays. It's inspired by And then my two favorite reviewers are ACG and SkillUp,
Mhm.
because both of their reviews, like every time I watch an ACG video or every time I watch a SkillUp review, I'm just like, why can't I do that? And I understand, you know, SkillUp has been doing it for years, same with ACG, but at some point I will make a SkillUp tier review. It'll take years, but I will. So, is there anything else you'd like to talk about, Mitchell?
No, I think we covered everything that you know, is kind of formulative of my career coming up.
Okay. Well, I appreciate you, Mitchell. That was a good interview. First episode of this, so I appreciate that. And subscribe, like the video. Mitchell is at Jurassic Rabbit. I will have it down beside his name on Twitter. Watch his videos on IGN. I'm sure you've seen them if you watch reviews. So yeah, thanks Mitchell, and thanks everybody for watching. See you all on the next video. Goodbye.
Bye bye.